David Greenshield asks a good question here. He says, what does Pete think of Trevor being coached by Urban Meyer? I haven't heard his opinion yet. I think it's an interesting fit. First of all, I might be in the minority here. I think Urban Meyer is going to be a good NFL coach. I know that the group think out there is that the college coaches can't translate to the NFL. We've heard that a million times because you can point out Steve Spurrier and you can point out a couple of these other guys, Nick Saban, that were great in college and failed in the NFL. There's also been plenty of them that have succeeded. Pete Carroll comes to mind. Might be the most. Right now, the coach that's translated the best, obviously Jimmy Johnson was with Miami and then won a couple of Super Bowls with the Cowboys. So there is a precedent set for elite college coaches that can go and win big in the NFL. I was even scratching my head a couple of years ago when the Arizona Cardinals hired Cliff Kingsbury. I'm like, this doesn't make much sense. But this is a different game today than it was even 20 years ago. The NFL has adopted a lot of college style of play, especially offensively, especially with quarterback play. I have no doubt in my mind that Urban Meyer has the cachet to surround himself with an NFL coaching staff that can get the best out of Trevor Lawrence. Now, what it comes down to is how do they, just like every other NFL team, how do they draft? How do they manage free agency to stay with the cap? All of those things. From a coaching standpoint, I have no doubt. I mean, Urban Meyer's a winner. He's won everywhere he's went, and I don't see any reason why he wouldn't be a winner at Jacksonville. And to answer your question, I'm not the biggest fan of Urban Meyer, the person. Of course, I don't know Urban Meyer personally, so it's just from what I see and read. But I pull it for Trevor Lawrence. So if for Trevor Lawrence to succeed, Urban Meyer has to succeed too. They're in this thing together. So I'm pulling for Urban Meyer as a result of that.
The one thing I will say about the probabilities of trying to predict whether Urban Meyer or anybody else will be successful in the NFL, you have to understand that every franchise in the NFL can be successful and cannot be successful. And what I mean by that is certainly the Pittsburgh Steelers, the New England Patriots, the Green Bay Packers have had a long run of success. So obviously those franchises are better over time than the Cincinnati Bengals and the Jacksonville Jaguars, etc. But you can look at any NFL franchise, and I would not be surprised if you said they're going to win Super Bowls or go to playoffs in the next 10 years, or they're not. It's pretty much an even playing field. Teams are working with the same resources, the same talent pool is accessible to them. It's not like if Urban Meyer goes to USC, the scales are tipped in his favor, much because of himself versus the Pac-12. He's going to go there, and if you said Urban Meyer just took the USC job, is he going to be successful? Yes, I don't need to think about it. If I would be shocked if he wasn't, yes, because he's got everything working in his favor. Is Oregon State going to be successful in the next 10 years with coach A, B, or C? Probably not. They're never successful, or they're rarely successful. Whereas the NFL, it's more of anywhere that Urban Meyer would have landed in the college ranks, the scales would have been tipped so heavily in his favor, versus he's just one of 32 guys that has an NFL franchise and has resources and personnel decisions to make along with a front office. So the slate is clean, and what can he do with it?
Yeah. And again, it comes down to drafting too. I'm seeing a lot of good points here in the comments about surrounding himself with a good coaching staff, all of those things. I agree. He did make the comment. I think it was after, watching Trevor Lawrence throw that day when he came down to Clemson. He said, I told my team, we cannot miss in this draft. We have to nail it. Because if you don't nail it, then that sets you back at least 2 or 3 seasons. Especially when it comes to a team like Jacksonville, who is obviously one of the worst teams in the league, otherwise they wouldn't have the first pick, to nail it with a new coach and the first overall pick. I mean, look at what happens if you bust on a quarterback and your first overall pick. The teams that do that, they aren't relevant for at least 3 or 4 years. So it's important.
And from doing this every day, Pete, and talking to different people, that when we survey the comments that come in from the live chat, typically their rooting interest has a lot to do with their opinion. So
James James Kane says Jaguars are in full rebuild mode. I don't agree with that. Coaching staff wise, they are. So they have actually some really good young talent, and they have, I believe, either the most or the second most cap space for free agency this season. So when you add the amount of draft picks they have with the talent that they already have there, a lot of young guys, and then you add a high amount of money to spend in free agency, you can go from terrible to really good in a hurry if you do things right.
All you have to do is look at the teams that make the NFL playoffs year to year and look at the number of spots that change year to year. It's like a pretty incredible number. It's like 40%, 50% of the teams. So just take the 12 teams that made the NFL playoffs last year, or I think it was 14 because they added a game. But anyway, it's typically 12 teams. Then understand that 5 or 6 of those are going to be completely different teams next year.
Yeah, there's a ton of parity in the NFL. There's a reason there's only maybe 2 or 3 teams going into any given season where you can say, well, we know these 2 or 3 teams are going to be playoff teams, or there at the end. Everybody else though it's just a guess.
The first thing that I hear brought up when people try to predict Urban Meyer's possible success in the NFL has to do with his attitude and his penchant for winning and how much he hates to lose. I heard Paul Feinbaum say the other day that Urban Meyer's the worst loser he's ever seen. I don't necessarily know that that's an insult or a compliment. Depends how you take it, because you don't want somebody to tolerate losing. But I know that Urban Meyer's capable enough mentally to know, I'm not going 15-1 in the NFL. This is a difference. So I have to approach losses in each game and understand 10-6 is successful. We get to the playoffs, we're fine. Now, whether he can handle that emotionally, internally, when he's losing 3 and 4 consecutive games next year, possibly, because they were what this past season? 2-14?
Yeah. No, I think they only won 1 game.
1-15.
Whatever. Yeah.
So they could be 4-12 and could be a huge improvement, but he's got to be, I know that mentally he understands this isn't the same. There's not the same expectations that I have to go undefeated or only lose 1 game every year.
That's the key. You nailed it, Mark, because this is the thing we always argue about with the expansion of the playoffs in college. Every game is so important, and in college, the pressure every week is a pressure cooker. The NFL is not that way. Like you said, you can go 8-8 technically and still make the playoffs. So, I mean, sometimes we've seen a 7-9 team do it. So it's a different thing, and your job is always on the line. Like, in other words, look what Jim Harbaugh is going through. They've had a pretty good squad since he's been there. They won a bunch of games, but never beat Ohio State. It seems like every season, his entire career or his future at Michigan hinges on this one victory that he hasn't got. You don't see that in the NFL. So it's a big difference. And I also think that he could take everything he's learned from being at the top of college football and take what he's learned and translate it to the professional game.